welcome everybody to the 2022 European Biotech Week, hosted by EuropaBio. And thank you all very much for joining us for a look at how biotechnology makes a difference to your health, your wealth, and the sustainability of the world in which you live. We are joined today by 4 of our amazing board members, each of whom brings a different story and representation of biotechnology into how industry works, how science works, and how the products that you use and the processes that you use are impacted and affected by biotechnology. So I'll have my first slide, please. So you will see we are joined today by Patricia Malarkey from DSM. Trish is also the chair of our board, which is so it's fantastic to have her here to share her own passions for biotechnology. We will then move to Stefan Buchholz from Evonik, looking very much at how biotechnology makes a difference to your own nutrition and daily routines. Then we'll switch over to healthcare with Tom Bowles of PTC, a company that really addresses rare diseases. And you'll see the amazing story that biotechnology tells for rare diseases all over the world now. And then finally, we move to Annemiek Bergkamen from Holland Bio, who can tell us not only what biotechnology looks like in Holland, but also why it looks like it is and how it works for a country developing an economy and a successful employment for people. So you are very welcome to get involved at all points of the webinar today. So I will take my next slide, please. So for our European Biotech Week this year, we have almost 100 events that have been submitted to our European Biotech Week platform from organizations across Europe who are informing, educating, and engaging people with biotechnology. Those events may be in person at local museums, in universities, or in schools, or online, such as our kickoff meeting is today. European Biotech Week has been going for a super long time, and so now it is in its 10th edition, which is really nice to see, and it's grown year by year. It's run all over the world, and EuropaBio runs the European edition. We have partners from across Europe, as you can see, and we are really happy to support efforts in all countries. So if you have not yet submitted an event to European Biotech Week, you are absolutely welcome to do so to help engage people who are in your communities into biotechnology. EuropaBio itself will be running 3 events. You have today's kickoff meeting, which really looks across EuropaBio and across the sectors, but we also have events on the 27th and the 29th of September. So please do go ahead and sign up. I'm going to give you a quick overview of who EuropaBio is and what we do so that you can understand why we're bringing you the event today. We are the Industrial Trade Association for biotechnology across all sectors. We work to be the voice of biotech to help companies grow successful pathways for products and processes to market, because these things don't happen on their own. They're driven by policy and legislation and investment and skills development. And for complex science to really reach fruition and make a difference to you as the citizen, all of these things need to help enable amazing science translate into industrial products and processes. So we really help to bring innovation right the way through from the amazing points of discovery through to their point of impact, be that for your healthcare, be that for economic development, or be that for Europe's sustainable future. And investment is a key part of this. So we really want to support organizations to be able to secure the right investment to be able to grow their biotechnology right the way through to where it will make an impact. And finally, we're all about excellence. We take excellent science and bring it across fantastic research, bring it across excellent industrial development, because everything needs to be great for it to make a difference and be effective at the end of the day. So EuropaBio really speaks up for all aspects of biotechnology with our member companies, and we're really happy to be helping to host European Biotech Week. Next slide, please. So a tiny insight into what we do. We are members, because we are a membership-driven organization. Our members are companies of all shapes and sizes, from tiny startups through to global multinationals, and they work across all sectors. And they work within our councils that we have. We have our Healthcare Biotechnology Council, which really looks at how the innovation pipeline for next generation medicines is fully flowing and making best use of Europe's amazing research base. Our Industrial Biotechnology Council really focuses on the amazing transformative power of biotechnology in products and processes all around us, be it from the food that you eat, through to the materials that you wash your clothes with, through to the fuel that goes in your cars. It all makes a huge difference. And finally, we have our National Associations Council, which is a collection of national and regional associations from all across Europe that help us build the right local landscape for biotechnology, be that science parks, helping startups, building the infrastructure and the skills that biotechnology needs to translate effectively into products. And through our work, we have lots of different voices for biotechnology. So we've developed up a number of aspects that really help us to reflect what biotech does and what it is for Europe. So we're a huge champion for small to medium enterprises, and we run this through our SME platform and our Bioforum that we run twice a year now, where SME voices are really heard and taken to policymakers. We have our EFIB conference, the European Forum for Industrial Biotech and Bioeconomy, which brings together decision makers from across the spectrum in Europe. And this year it will be in Vilnius in Lithuania. We have our National Associations Council Summit, which brings associations together across all sectors to show how national priorities help build a successful Europe. And these are underpinned by activities such as our Y4 report for the economic footprint of biotechnology, so we can show how biotech is manifested inside the economic development of Europe. And we're always growing and always changing. So coming in 2023, we'll be launching a biomanufacturing platform, which brings a common thread throughout all of our biotechnology work and how we tell the story of the impact that biotech has on economies, skills, products, and processes through the lens of manufacturing. Next slide, please. So I've already slightly introduced our speakers today, so I will give you a whirlwind tour again. We have Patricia Malarkey from DSM, we have Tom Bols from PTC Therapeutics, Annemiek Verkammen from Holland Bio, and Stefan Buchholz from Evonik. Each is going to give a 10-minute insight into their world of biotechnology and the difference that it makes. And you are very welcome to add questions into the chat function, and we will ask those questions either after the presentations or in a quick Q&A at the end of the webinar. And this webinar will be available in a recorded version later, so you will be able to also catch up with it and contact us about it. Next slide, please. So use the chat function, as I've mentioned, so don't hesitate to ask any questions or make any comments, and we are very happy to see them. You can also, you will have seen a lot of information on social media today, so do not hesitate to share and like things and also ask questions through that. We will share the webinar recording with you after that, and we look forward to seeing you in other Biotech Week events this week. So I will go to my next slide, which is very happily to introduce Trish Malarkey, who is the chair of our board in EuropaBio, and is going to give you an insight from DSM into the role that biotech plays and how it makes a difference for you. Thank you very much, Trish.
Thanks, Claire, and really genuinely appreciate the opportunity to talk about how not just DSM, but how we, the world, can use biotechnology to address really some of the world's greatest challenges. And if you could put up my first slide, please. Yeah, and really, if you look at the world today, I don't need to tell anybody, we all have our view of the problems. In fact, I think many of us are faced with rather alarming views of the problems. And I think it's great, Claire, that we're doing this Biotech Week, because I think it is time that we started to focus more on the solutions at every level, whether it's scientific, company, the public, because it is a scary and alarming thought that as we see a lot of these mega trends of population growth really competing for the natural resources. And if you look at just the two numbers on there, the world's population is expected to reach about 10 billion by 2050. And you can imagine that with that increasing consumption of food at a time where our food system is quite broken. But it's not only about our ability to have food security, it's about also access to medicines and other important nutritional ingredients. And of course, it's one thing to say we need to actually provide a supply to that demand from the population. But most importantly, we have to meet that supply in a sustainable way. And that's where, if you move to the next slide, you may say, well, actually, yeah, these are really challenging moments for us. There may be the feeling that it's an impossible mission in times, but I really get excited because I think there is a very realistic and achievable goal to use what we would call nature's toolbox. So using biotechnology, using synthetic biology to copy what plants and animals do all the time in land agriculture and in aquaculture. We are able to use microorganisms to produce what plants and what animals do. And through biotechnology, and as Claire said, biomanufacturing, we can use microorganisms to develop products, food products and solutions that allow us to feed the population more and more sustainably. We also have to think about, at the end of the day, all organisms need energy. They need a source of carbon and they need a source of energy. And if we can actually look at ways to use our waste, we can start to think about using waste to feed organisms so that it actually helps us to manage another big problem that we have, which is food loss and food waste. Of course, if we can move some of our production, some of our biomanufacturing from, I'm still on the previous slide, if we can move some of our biomanufacturing from land and aquaculture to the fermenter, we can start to also help address some of the climate change as well. And we can also start to think about ways of preserving biodiversity. So there's many opportunities for biotechnology to address the global challenges. And Claire asked me to give one example, and I decided to give two examples of what DSM is doing to really look at this. And with the next slide this time, I want to give an example, which is vitamin A. Vitamin A is an essential nutrient for good health. It has huge benefits in the immune and the digestive system. And it is also an important ingredient for skin health and anti-aging. And we at DSM have been researching for some years now, and we have had breakthroughs whereby it's now possible for us to produce vitamin A using yeast strains specially developed over time to convert renewable carbon sources into vitamin A. And DSM has already started, it's important, it's one thing to say we can produce vitamin A in a fermenter, but what is important is to be able to do it at scale. At a scale that is going to meet with customers, and we have already done that, and we're starting to work with companies and scientists from other companies to develop even more scalability, better cost production, but also we already know we're able to produce it at this early stage with 30% carbon footprint, less than the actual chemical manufacture. So commercial scale is really important. Developing end uses is still something that we need to do, but it is a significant step to be able to produce the first bio-based vitamin A. And then my second example, you'll know, maybe recognize DSM is a company that is involved in animal nutrition as well as human nutrition. So we want to support all forms of protein production and be able to produce protein with the highest sustainability standards, whether that's protein used in animal feed or whether it's new and alternative proteins produced from plants, or as I'm going to talk about right now, the opportunity to produce proteins by fermentation. We recognize the need for alternative proteins. As we mentioned before, if we have to produce 70% more food, we're going to have to look at other ways. And to meet the demand for low footprint feed and raw materials, and to reduce reliance on those materials on solely animal origins, such as fish meal, or vegetable origins, such as proteins, soy proteins. We have been inspired by the energy transition and are starting to explore carbon dioxide as a source of carbon in combination with renewable energy to produce proteins in microbes that have the right nutritional qualities, especially for aquaculture. And that's what we're looking at in the form of single cell proteins, deploying microorganisms to do that. We have already developed a robust process via organic platform molecules like methanol or ethanol, and we are executing to pilot scale, and we've tested the products already in our own fish farms, and results have been positive. We are able to replace some fish meal and most soy protein in the fish diets. And as a follow-up, we're moving towards really trying to think about a new value chain with upstream industrial partners and downstream people who will take it into the fish meal and the fish industry with a goal ultimately to secure net zero supply. This is a great product because it also complements the algal-driven fish oil replacement that DSM produces in a partnership with Evonik, in a partnership called Veramaris. And this is really a big step towards increasingly making a sustainable aquaculture industry. And then in the next slide, extending the same example a little bit, the E protein, we have a collaboration. DSM works in Europe with many collaborators. And I give an example here of a collaboration we have with Jack Pronk at the TU Delft. And this is really a bit more fundamental in nature, the research. And it's really geared to look at finding ways to get energy, renewable electrical energy, and using a carbon dioxide from the atmosphere to produce proteins. And the vision here is really the opportunity. If you fast forward, we genuinely believe there is an opportunity to reduce the dependency on land and the dependency on sea for the manufacturing of proteins. If we can continue to use the solution of biotechnology and biomanufacturing, we believe we can reduce the protein gap and secure food availability within the limits of our planetary boundaries. So I really use those two examples, proteins and vitamin A, really essential ingredients and nutrients for all humans and for animals, and to do so in a way that ensures the health of our planet. And I'm really looking forward to this 10th edition of the European Biotech Week that really let's start to celebrate the role biotech can play in really making sure that we solve some of the world's biggest challenges. And with that, Claire, I hand back to you.
Thank you so much, Trish. And it's always so inspirational to look at the almost infinity applications you can take for biotechnology. And it seems that what I enjoy about this role is that you can look every day at everything you have and everything you do and say, how can we make this more sustainable? And this, you gave us some really good examples of things we entirely take for granted, a vitamin tablet, fish farms. How do we make huge strides to make them more sustainable? It's not about not having them, it's about deploying biotech to make them a long-term sustainable for Europe. So I wanted to ask you a super quick question, is that it feels that we have so much more potential to unlock in Europe using these types of technologies. I mean, how would you say that yourself and DSM look at the potential that Europe has for the use of biotechnology for a more sustainable products and processes.
Yeah, and I think Claire, that's exactly why, if I look at a company like DSM, we have transitioned over time from being, if you think DSM was the Dutch state mine, and we have transitioned over time towards biotech and biosciences, for the reason that the real potential for a company like DSM, who is looking to say, we play our role as an industry, we play our role in solving big world challenges. So we've put our commitment towards the biosciences and biotechnology as the place to play. But of course, I think the other answer is we can do that because there is, at this moment in time, this great convergence of technologies, the technology of chemistry, where we're able to start to really see green chemistry. We learn a lot from chemistry that we can apply in biotechnology. And now with the application of digital mathematics and AI, we really are able to take this precise capability and, as I said at the beginning, start to copy nature in a very precise and safe way. And I think that's why DSM has made that commitment to biotech and biosciences.
Thanks so much, Trish. And it's amazing when you think you reminded us that it came from like Dutch state mining, and it is now a biotechnology company. There's hope for everybody, and biotech offers so much potential to transform what you do and how you do it. So I'll stop talking now, even though I could ask you questions all day, and I will introduce our next presenter, who is Stefan Buchholz, who's going to continue the conversation about biotechnology in your everyday food and processes. So Stefan, you're going to share your screen now. So hopefully that comes up all right.
I hope so.
I can see you.
Yes.
There we go. And now I can see nearly your slides.
And now you can see the screen.
So now we just need them in presentation mode. That is perfect. Thank you very much, Stefan.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you, Claire. I think Trish already gave a great presentation into the topic. Yeah, how can biotechnology contribute to a more sustainable world? Evonik is a chemical company. Yeah, we are in a phase of transition, and you see it on the lower right-hand side. Our vision is leading beyond chemistry, and we realize that more and more, in order to be successful and to become more sustainable, we have to go beyond chemistry. Looking at industrial biotechnology and how it contributes to society, sustainability, and economics. I want to start with the classical biotechnological production, which mainly is fermentation. And we and many other companies are known for the fermentation of amino acids. And to give you a little bit of background, we started with methionine as an amino acid. With the methionine, we have this particular case that animals as well as humans can use both, for the experts among you, the D and the L form. So you can feed the racemate. After that was a successful business, we also wanted to sell other amino acids like lysine. But in the case of lysine, you need one enantiomer as the L form. And this you can produce much more efficiently using biotechnology, because in the biosphere, all the molecules basically are chiral. Today, we are aware of many compounds, products which are being produced by fermentation, amino acids, antibiotics, enzymes. We just heard about alternative proteins and new developments in these fields. And I would like also to give you one example from Evonik. And these are our biosurfactants here, namely what you see on the right, on the lower right-hand side, our rhamnolipids. We have scaled this up. We are now in the process of building a world-scale plant for the production of this biosurfactant. We are calling it a biosurfactant because it's produced from renewable feedstock. It's a molecule which in the same form also exists in nature. It's readily biodegradable and is very mild to the skin. So it has a lot of advantages. It was a 10 years journey to develop the fermentation process, but now we are there. And what is also very important, I think, and this is the fact we also should keep in mind. this molecule is not as cheap as some other surfactants. Yeah? So it does have to have also perhaps some advantages, and it has. It has also superior performance in many applications in cleaning. And as it's so mild to the skin, yeah, we are selling it also to some companies, especially to Unilever, for hand dishwash formulations. Yeah, it's public domain. Yeah, we are doing this together with Unilever. And I think this is pretty typical for such kind of development. Trish already mentioned it also. Yeah, you need partners. You cannot do everything on your own. Here we are on a journey. Yeah, after scaling up this highly sustainable biosurfactant, we are now looking also in alternative feedstocks to make it even more sustainable. But that relates somehow to classical chemistry and classical biotechnology. We are using biotechnology to produce, let me say, chemicals. There's another aspect to it, which I consider to be very important as well, and that's a biological understanding. I'm responsible for research and development of our division, Nutrition and Care. And we're having 3 business lines: animal nutrition, healthcare, and care solutions, so ingredients for cosmetics. In all these 3 applications and markets, our products will end up in the environment. Yeah. So, and they will deliver their performance in direct contact with the biosphere. So we have to really understand what they are doing. Yeah, we have to know the effects. We have to know the side effects. We have to make sure that these molecules are readily biodegradable when they are spread out in the environment. So we have to look into the details. And I give you one example here, and these are the probiotics. Probiotics are now developed by several companies with a clear ambition to substitute as good as possible antibiotics in animal feeding. But if you don't give antibiotics to the chicken, for example, then you will lose performance. How can you counteract? You can counteract with the microorganisms, with the probiotics, but you have to really understand what these microorganisms are doing. And what we have built up, that's the so-called DAISY system. This is a view of our lab in Künzelberg, and what you see here, that's an artificial chicken gut. Yeah, and here we can exactly analyze what our feed components are doing in the interaction with the food or feed. Yeah? And we are also talking about the nutribiome concept, which means that the probiotics, the feed, and the animal, they're all interacting, and we have to understand all these interactions. We need this to be successful, to develop good products, but also in order to be responsible, we have to really understand what our products are doing. Last but not least, I want to come to the right column, chemistry supporting biotechnology. We are a chemical company, and with the rapidly developing biotech industry in Europe and all over the world, also new markets are opening up, which generate new business opportunities for us. And I want to give you also here one example. And this are our lipid nanoparticles. Yeah, what you see on the right-hand side, that's an eye catcher representing the COVID virus. And you know that for the vaccinations, we are using the LNPs, the lipid nanoparticles. And here the messenger RNA is being formulated with different lipids. Yeah? In this specific case, it's 4 different lipids. Evonik is producing 3 of them, yeah, the cationic lipids, the PEG lipid, and the cholesterol. And the first 2 lipids we can easily or could scale up quickly, yeah, due to our know-how from a very different field, yeah, from the cosmetics field. And with respect to the cholesterol, we also have a plant-based cholesterol in our portfolio. And this is very important as the pharmaceutical industry tries to avoid material from animal origin. So this is another recent development, and we see a lot of further potential in this development, which goes way beyond COVID and way beyond vaccination. Even bigger potentials we're also seeing, for example, in cancer treatment. And this was my brief overview over fields of action in the field of biotechnology at Evonik. And I could only give this very brief overview, and I'm sure that in this week, this Biotech Week, we will learn a lot more, and we will be introduced in many more opportunities. Thank you so much for your attention, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much indeed, Stefan. And it's always amazing that each story in itself tells a tale. Because picking up from your presentation, it is incredibly interesting how complex the supply chain is for products that people might go, oh yes, this is a vaccine. But in fact, it's an incredibly complex production pathway. And that's why we talk about it in EuropaBio so much, in that Europe can be more resilient by being able to handle more aspects of this supply chain development within Europe. It's not about taking it all into Europe, it's about being part of a robust global supply chain. But the more that we can do here, the skills, the investment, the infrastructure, the more complete and more resilient the supply chain is for European citizens. It's not just about a single item. And I also really like the fact that you gave us the example of chickens. And as with many things, particularly in agriculture, you can't just take something out and expect the end product to stay the same, especially when you've got pressures on producing enough food for citizens everywhere in the world. So I love the fact that it's not about just removing things from agriculture, but replacing them with smart alternatives, which are more sustainable and which also use Europe's own immense science base to create a competitive alternative to what currently is going on. And finally, I wanted to ask you a quick question around your partnerships, because you referenced early in the webinar around your partnership with Unilever. And obviously that produces a lot of products that are consumer facing. So what kind of demand is there for these consumer facing companies now to look into how their own product portfolio becomes more sustainable?
Yeah, I think we are seeing it now in all the markets. I mean, I've been in the industry for more than 20 years, and we advertised biotechnology already 20 years ago. But 20 years ago, nobody was willing to pay any extra money for a sustainable solution. That's one aspect. And also nobody was willing to accept any lower performance in any respect. Yeah, so you always had to be better and cheaper if you want to introduce a new product, and that often is difficult. Yeah, and there the world somewhat is changing because we increasingly see sustainability as an integral property of the products. Yeah, and so when a product becomes more sustainable, customers nowadays are more willing to accept this as a better product. Yeah. And I think that's very important for the transition.
You make a really good point. And it's not about, because we've always known the science is able to be applied into many things that will improve a product, but it's really the consumer and societal recognition that this is now an integral part of the quality of the product, the fact that it has a more sustainable footprint. And so I think this has really woken up over the last 4 or 5 years, I think, and I'm excited to see the pressures that we get from the general public on this, because that's a huge driver. So thank you very much indeed, Stefan. That was a really great oversight into more excellent biotechnology examples. And we're now going to switch over to a more distinct healthcare side of it. So Martina, if you can put the next presentation up from your own screen, that would be great. And I am going to introduce Tom Bowles, Head of Government Affairs and Patient Advocacy for PTC Therapeutics. So Tom, if you would like to introduce yourself while Martina's just putting your slide into presentation mode, that would be perfect.
I've put my slides. Can you see them?
Oh yeah, we have them, that's fine.
Okay, good. So yeah, thanks Claire, thank you very much. And thank you for the opportunity to present indeed a healthcare sort of aspect of biotechnology. I think it's quite fascinating to see that I'm the third almost of this presentation, and you see the different applications. So it's indeed quite remarkable what biotechnology can do in very different parts of life and society, etc. So I want to indeed give, as you can see there, an element or a vision from a healthcare perspective, in particular what we do for rare diseases, and then deploying indeed a technology that I will explain a little bit more, a biotechnology called ATMPs, and more specifically gene therapy. So I work for PTC Therapeutics, being a member of EuropaBio. We find ourselves pretty special in the sense that we are, as you can see from the slide on the right, we are a global company. We have a representation everywhere around the globe almost, but we're definitely mid-size. We're not a big pharma company. We are in the sort of mid range, with a turnover of around $500 million per year and around 1,200 employees, as I said, worldwide. I think we're also quite special, not only because of our size, but also we really try to come up with innovative therapies using biotechnology, but also chemistry, etc., to come up with indeed innovative treatments for patients with rare diseases. We have at the moment a number commercialized, but our pipeline also has various new treatments for rare diseases coming up, hopefully. And one that we're at the moment particularly excited about is a gene therapy, which is sort of clustered in the term advanced therapy medicinal products, ATMPs. You will hear that expression quite a lot, and we interchanged it a little bit with the terms cell and gene therapies. And as I said, we're at the moment quite excited because we have our first gene therapy approved for AADC deficiency, which is an ultra-rare neuro disease, which I will come back to as well. Let's see. So the cell and gene therapy space, as I said, is a technology that is pretty new. I mean, it exists already for a number of years, more than a decade, but still it's quite a new, novel technology. Is actually a very exciting new innovative frontier in the biotech sector. So I think you see a lot of growth in companies focusing on developing these kind of technologies. You can see there the numbers are quite impressive. I think worldwide we have more than 1,000 companies, of which PTC is just one, that are focusing on developing cell and gene therapies. There are more than 1,000 clinical studies ongoing. So at the moment in Europe as well, we have only a few approved, but the future looks pretty bright if everything is successful and gets through all the systems that, as you know, in the pharmaceuticals sector is quite complicated. But at the moment, for example, we have over 100 in phase 3, which is, as I guess many of you know, the last stage before you can submit for a regulatory approval. So already thousands of patients are benefiting from it. And what we really think that, we use this kind of language that indeed the life of patients is really impacted quite dramatically, right? It's a real life-changing technology because compared to many other medicines and treatments that sort of are more focusing on fighting the symptoms, the cell and gene therapies are really trying to correct the genetic causes of a disease. And I will explain a little bit what a gene therapy will do in that stage. You see also that we'll talk a lot around rare diseases, but you can see also that cell and gene therapies are becoming more and more standard and will really go beyond rare diseases and also find their applications in cancer and oncology, and indeed also larger patient population diseases. And I think from a European perspective, it's also very interesting to see that traditionally maybe these kind of technologies were manufactured in other parts of the world predominantly, like the US. But we see also that in Europe is really moving ahead with manufacturing capabilities. So the rest of my short presentation, I just wanted to explain you in 2 words what are gene therapies, if that's not understood, and then also explain a little bit that whilst we're all very enthusiastic about these kind of technologies in terms of what they can bring to patients, as they are so new and so different from standard medicines that most people, but also most stakeholders like regulators and payers and HTA bodies are used to, we also face quite a number of hurdles that I think we need to get through, and that I think we as a company, but as EuropaBio, are really advocating what needs to be changed to make sure that indeed these technologies arrive at patients. So maybe very this is a scientific subject, so I tried to find for my scientific colleagues the one slide that would explain maybe the best what is a gene therapy. So in a nutshell, these kind of diseases have a genetic cause, which means that something in your body, the gene that causes certain disease, the relevant gene is not functioning well. And that causes, let's say, that's the genetic cause of the disease. And then essentially you have, as you can see there in the 3 columns, you have 3 ways, maybe 3 ways to trying to address that. So first you can do introducing a gene to replace a malfunctioning gene that causes this disease, with a healthy one. That's a typical route of administration. The second gene therapy option is that you actually try to neutralize a mutated gene. So the gene that is causing this disease, you try to neutralize it and make it inactive. And the third gene therapy approach is really to introduce, and this is the most novel one I would say, is to introduce a whole new gene that helps to fight the disease, that helps the body to fight the disease. So essentially, what I think is really important is that, as I said before, is that rather than treating a symptom of a disease with a pill or an injection, you really try to go to the genetic cause of a disease and try to correct that, either by replacing it or making it inactive or introducing a new gene. And indeed, the ultimate aim is, of course, that this has a curative effect. But at the moment, what we see also with our gene therapy, that the impact is really dramatic. For example, our gene therapy for AADC deficiency is AADC deficiency means that the AADC enzyme that is produced in your brain is responsible for the production of neurotransmitters like dopamine and serotonin. And these are very important for your functioning of the body, your mental development, etc. And if that doesn't work, the patient, and it already starts with little children, they don't develop at all. They don't develop physically, they don't develop mentally, and they're in quite a serious state. So by replacing this malfunctioning AADC enzyme with a gene therapy, the effect on patients is really remarkable. What we've seen is these kind of kids that have this disease are developing almost like other normal kids. So it's really a dramatic technology that we think is benefiting for a number of patients. As I said, most of these gene therapies at the moment are really used for rare diseases, because rare diseases have this genetic cause. As you can see, rare diseases means, of course, that the rarity is the 1 in 2,000 people in the EU. And you even have like our own AADC deficiency. It's a very rare disease, so 1 in 100,000. As I said, several are approved, but it's still sort of a handful. It's sort of like in the dozens or a dozen in Europe. So the future hopefully will bring many more. These need to be administered, as I said, they need to be really injected into the body. Can be in the brain, can be in other parts of the body. As you can imagine, this requires very specialized care. Not everybody can administer this, and you really need specialized treatment centers to do this. And then one of the challenges that we see as well with gene therapy, again, is that these centers are not available in all countries in Europe, but the patients are in all countries. And so we need to see how we can basically move patients from one country to a treatment center country, which is, as you can imagine, not very easy, because healthcare is organized at the national level, and this international element is something quite novel for most stakeholders. So, and then also I will, I will talk a little bit more now about what are the sort of challenges that facing, apart from these moving patients, what kind of challenges we face to bring these kind of technologies to the market. And I thought I'd do this in a sort of fairly simple slide that basically starts, I have an idea, and then it ultimately, of course, the gene therapy will need to the patients. And so under there, you see the 4 buckets that are basically are very crudely describing the pathway of getting from an idea to getting it to patients, which has a research and development element. So you do your research, you need to get a regulatory approval, then you need to get a pricing and reimbursement approval, which is different authorities, and then ultimately it needs to go to the patient. So if I start completely at the left, you can see that R&D is very important. As I said, this is a very promising technology. It's also a very difficult technology. And I think many of the diseases areas, and for example, rare diseases, we have more than 6,000. We lack a certain basic understanding of the pathology, of the genetic causes, etc. So much more research is necessary. This research, of course, is done by the private sector, but also by the hospital and other academic sector. And I think it's really important that we keep working together, that we don't get exceptions for hospitals, and that the R&D pathways are really going forward in harmony between the different researchers. The second bucket around regulatory approval pathway is really important. Normally, you get your regulatory approval based on so-called clinical trials. Clinical trials are essentially tests on patients. And for typical medicine, you talk about what we call randomized placebo-controlled trials. So it means like large groups of patients are being used in clinical trials, and the data that generates is being submitted for regulatory approval. Here we're talking about two challenges. One is that these gene therapies are for rare diseases, so you have very few patients, so also very few patients in your clinical trials. And they are very novel technologies that you cannot sort of randomize and placebo-controlled. You cannot give one patient a pill and the other a sort of placebo, because this is a gene therapy that needs to, for example, needs to be injected in the brain. So this control mechanism you can't have. And so the regulator, but also afterwards, really needs to be feeling comfortable with the limited number of data that you have, and really that you are able to use what we call real-world evidence, so that once the product has an approval, that the data that is collected after approval is sort of backing up your original decision for approval, if you want. So not everything is pre-approval, but that this becomes a whole continuum of data collection, limited data, pre-approval, further collection, and further data generation post-approval. And that package is sort of supporting your marketing authorization. That is a whole new concept where regulators feel reasonably comfortable with at the moment. Other important stakeholders like HTA bodies and payers have more difficulties with that. And that's something as well that we need to work on. Then the next stage, you get to pricing and reimbursement. So then you need to negotiate your price and the reimbursement conditions with payers in every country in the EU. Here again, as we are talking about a gene therapy, which means basically one-time administration, that the effect is lasting for the rest of the patient's life, is a model that most payers are not used to. Typically, medicines, therapies are administered as what I would call chronically. You have to take your pill or whatever per day, per week, per month for the rest of your life. And the price is attached to that sort of rhythm. It's like a mortgage over years. The fact that you have a one-off payment that is reasonably high, but then the rest of the time you don't pay anything anymore because it's a one-time treatment, is a model that most payers are not used to yet. And again, that's because the technology is new and payers never had to deal with it, and they only deal with this for the last few years. So that's a model as well that we have to work around and see how can we accommodate that this kind of technology can actually fit in our pricing and reimbursement system. And then finally, this point indeed, as I mentioned this before, this is a very innovative technology. Some of these gene therapies can be administered in all countries because they have a different application mode, and most countries, if not all countries in the EU, for example, will have centers that can administer it. Other gene therapies are really requiring a very specialized treatment center, And those treatment centers are available or exist only in a few countries. So the challenge is really to see how patients from the other countries can also be treated in these treatment centers. And this is the so-called cross-border healthcare that has been established in the EU for many, many years, but it doesn't work at the moment perfectly for this kind of very innovative technology. So not saying I don't want to have a negative story, it's just that this, this is sort of the yin and yang. It's sort of like really innovative, very promising technologies, but they're also very different from what most people, and as I said, most stakeholders, regulators, payers, HTA bodies are used to. And there's some friction there that we need to solve, but again, those are subject to lively discussions, either we have as a company, but also associations, EuropaBio, National Biotech, and other associations are having to make sure that indeed the system can accommodate these technologies. So just to conclude, as I say, these ATMPs, like cell and gene therapies, are really a great biotech innovation. They're really adding, as I said, there to the arsenal of treatments for physicians to treat patients which have very unmet medical needs, which didn't have a treatment before. We're really building, of course, this is a global industry and a global sector. It's really important that Europe stays competitive in that sector vis-a-vis the US, vis-a-vis China, and that we have also a sustainable, innovative system and ecosystem in Europe that really range from research, the industry, to patients. And that will require, of course, indeed, as I say, there are investments, long-term investments, long-term visions, and also, of course, as I said before, the updates of systems. And really, this is, as I said, the last one is important, particularly for SMEs, but also mid-sized companies. We're all doing our best to bring this innovation to patients, but it's a risky adventure. This is a technology that we're all very enthusiastic on, but we have to see how on the long term it will flourish. So it's really important to reduce risk and to create a supportive environment for these kind of companies to make sure that cell and gene therapies are here to stay in the first place for patients. So thank you very much, Claire. That's what I wanted to share.
No, thanks very much indeed, Tom. And it's always amazing to hear about the scientific breakthroughs that have made this possible. It's very humbling to when you hear the stories of the patients that you affect directly. Yeah. Because often it's very easy to look at the picture as a whole. And when you describe patients who have not had any disease management before, let alone something that could be potentially curative, it's astonishing what we are able to do scientifically. But as you said, the pathway is really long and it is really complicated, especially where it's a very innovative, it's an innovative science, and it goes into it is a completely different mechanism. So it challenges the existing healthcare mechanism in Europe, but both at EU level and at national level. And as you obviously, as everybody in EuropaBio knows at the moment, there's a big change in pharmaceutical legislation going on right now, which will set the pathway for innovative medicines for decades to come. So what changes, what will help PTC Therapeutics in its field of rare diseases through the legislation through which science and clinical trials and development to market is achieved? What do you need to achieve from this?
Yeah, I think I covered a little bit in my presentation, right? I think we're all so used to sort of the standard way of operating, right? Whether it's how to develop clinical trials and what you need to do, etc. And everybody's so familiar with that, all the way to the pricing and reimbursement systems. And again, you can argue what the price should be, but I mean, most payers will understand for a chronic treatment, what the costs are, etc. The fact that you have, as I said, the gene therapy, but also cell therapies, this unique element of a one-off treatment, of which the effect should last a lifetime, is sort of really novel, right? And people say, okay, how do we have this guarantee that it works a long time? How do we amortize this? If you buy a house, it's quite simple. You're not expected to pay that up all front. You have a mortgage, right? But a mortgage idea in a pricing and reimbursement system is actually very difficult to grasp, because budgets are set per year, etc. So it's this whole notion of when you come into the legislation, to make sure that the legislation is adopted and adapted to make sure that this technology can flourish and that you can get approvals, all the way up to what is more responsible for the national authorities, that these products indeed can also be successful on the national markets, right? And that's something that takes a while, and it links also. I saw a question in the chat.
Yes, there's a question in the chat.
Are there any gene therapies successful? Yes, there are. Right, there are. Of course, there's the famous one from our good friends from Novartis called for SMA. There are other gene therapies as well. We have our gene therapy approved this year, and earlier this year we're treating patients already with that. So yes, they are. But it's true, there are also gene therapies have been withdrawn for commercial reasons. Yeah, so which is quite unique. You don't see that very often. Products are usually withdrawn because they don't get an approval or whatever, or there's a safety issue. Or so it is a technology where people get very enthusiastic about because they see what the effect is on patients. It's also a technology that still we need to really treat carefully and nurture that it gets to patients, as I said.
So thanks very much indeed, Tom. We're going to now move to our final board member of the afternoon. And we've had some really amazing presentations as an insight into how biotech is potential impact and what it can do for society. And now we're looking at what that means for us as we go about our everyday lives, our employment, our economy, what our country chooses to invest into to grow. So I would like to invite Annemiek Berghamen from Holland Bio to share her screen now for our final presentation to talk about what biotech looks like in action in Holland and what you need to do as a country to make it work and how it impacts. So Annemiek, please take it away.
Thanks so much, Claire. Can you see my slides?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, thanks for the invitation. And I really enjoyed the other presentations because it gives so much insight about the potential of biotech. But first, for who don't know me, I'm the managing director of Holland Bio. And I have to say that I really love my job, and there are different views on what I do every day. But the reason that I get out of bed every day is because I'm convinced that everybody in the world should benefit as soon as possible from the newest scientific breakthroughs. So that's what keeps me going every day. And it's an amazing sector to work for, because if you look at the world, we have so many challenges. Our climate is changing. We have been fighting a pandemic. And on the medical field, there are still so much medical needs for which we do not have a solution today. And these things are really major challenges. They are global problems. And luckily for us, the United Nations defined the Sustainable Development Goals. And I think it's pretty exciting. And I think the other speakers already presented this very well, that biotech can contribute to 11 out of these 17 strategic development goals. And that's really amazing. And I think McKinsey also pointed this out in a very nice way. They published the report, it was called Biorevolution. They say there is a biorevolution going on because of the convergence of so many technologies, of course, biotechnology, but also chemistry, biology, and AI, of course. And McKinsey says that biotechnology will change the way we produce materials, the way we produce food, and the way how we can cure, and the way how we can stay healthy. And these numbers, what biotechnology can benefit on an economic scale. And mind you, it's not only about economics, the societal benefits are also calculated in an economic way. It exceeds the trillions, and that's really amazing, especially if you know that this report was written based on technology, but on science that we already have. So it's not about the science which we have to discover tomorrow. It's based on the science we know now and which kind of projects and services we could develop and are in development actually. But we all know from the laboratory to society, it's a long and bumpy road and there are many hurdles in the way. And I think there is where organizations like EuropaBio, but also Holland Bio are. We are here to make sure that new innovations and new products and services will be adapted, implemented, and also authorized to get to use them. And also this in the same report that I mentioned, McKinsey also made a guide and an estimated what the percentage is which defines the success of an innovation. And I can't see the audience, and if I could, I would have asked you, what would you think? But so I have to tell you the answer, and the answer is it's more than 70%. So if you have a technology or an innovation and it's forbidden or it's not accepted, yeah, you won't be successful, whatever the science or how fantastic it might be. And I think we have seen this in the past, and we're still experiencing this today also in Europe. So that's why Holland Bio is here, and we always work from our mission that biotech makes life better. And it's our goal to make sure that biotech products will really benefit our health and sustainability and also benefit to our economies. And a little bit more about Holland Bio. Holland Bio is also a broad biotech organization. We have more than 270 members now in the Netherlands. And our members are active in different kind of fields. It's from diagnostics, therapeutics, cell and gene therapy, like Thomas's company. DSM is a member of Holland Bio, and we have companies who are active in the development of alternative proteins and, for example, cultured meats. And most of our member companies are also in the SME field. And so they have a high, they use a lot of knowledge, they need a lot of investments, and time to markets are generally very long, and it's not a free market. So that's really some characteristics that really binds all these different kind of companies who are a member of Holland Bio, but also, for example, of EuropaBio, of course. So, and what we try to do is to roll out the red carpet for new innovations. We would love it when new innovations are welcomed to our society. And we developed a kind of approach to really improve the innovation climate in the Netherlands. And if I look back at different projects we did at Holland Bio, I think we always have been most successful if we really look for solutions that improve the whole ecosystem. And we always try to focus on the front runners, because the front runner companies are the ones who run into the obstacles first. If you are, for example, the first company who is developing cultured meat, or you are one of the first companies who's going to launch gene therapy, and I think Thomas illustrated very well that this is a total different kind of therapy which has different needs. So all these companies who are doing this for the first time, they run into the obstacles. And what they are also doing, they are disturbing the ecosystem, because an ecosystem is kind of a balance. And if you have a disruptor and a company, like many biotech companies, they somehow disturb the ecosystem with a good cause, of course, because if you implement the new innovation, you will get a better sustainability or better health. So, but when you disturb an ecosystem, it always gives friction and discussions. And I think one of the key things to improve an ecosystem is really working together. And I have some examples where we have been successful, but I also would like to share with you my wish list. So I won't elaborate on my whole wish list. We need another hour, but just some examples. So the good news is it is possible to improve an ecosystem. I think one of the problems in Europe is that we have excellent science here, but that we are not that good in translating the science into new products and services, because a lot of the knowledge still stays in the academia and doesn't come out very easily. And that's at least a problem we experienced in the Netherlands. So we launched an initiative together with all the universities, applied universities and the university medical centers, together with Janssen, DSM, and also Holland Bio. And the goal of this initiative is to convert the knowledge into products and services. And we wrote an application last year to the Dutch government, and the initiative is granted with 246 million euro. And we really want to bring scientists and entrepreneurs together in this program, and also to provide funds to develop new ideas. So that's one thing. It's still in the start. We still have to set up the new organization, but I think it's a great example of collaboration between many parties. Another thing, and that's about GMO regulation for cell and gene therapies. And I realize it's only a small part in a long chain, like Thomas illustrated very well, that you need a lot of different things to improve, to make sure that cell and gene therapies will be accepted and reach the patients. But in the Netherlands, we had a problem with the permit to do a clinical trial in the Netherlands. You had to wait quite long for a permit. And by working together again with all the university, with also the Dutch Cancer Fund, other ministries, we managed to reduce these timelines enormously. And another example, it was only a pilot, but a successful pilot. And in this project, the Dutch Medicines Evaluation Board started working together with the Dutch Healthcare Institute. And the latter one is responsible for reimbursement. And Dutch Medicines Evaluation Board also works together with EMA for the market authorization of a product. And they decided to try if they could do these two procedures at the same time. Because usually you have to wait for your market authorization at EMA, and then you can start discussing your reimbursement process. And these two organizations in the Netherlands start working together, and also work together with the industry associations. And it ended in a successful pilot. And now we have to make sure that this new way of working, that we can also transpose it for other products and services, because I think it makes sense. And now my wish list, other things we need to improve in the Netherlands. And I only going to mention two of them. This is not an especially Dutch example, it's an European example. And I think that many of you know that the regulations for GMOs in Europe will be revisited. And at Holland Bio, we really believe that we need a paradigm shift. We really need to start looking at the products and not at the technology anymore. And I think we really need this modernization, not only for plant breeding, but also for the broader biotech field. We think that there should not be distinguished between GMO or non-GMO. It's about is it a product we would like to have or not. And if you look at it from a different angle, you really conclude that you need regulations that really stimulate innovation, that bring us more a healthier society and more sustainable society. And my last example is more about the healthcare industry in the Netherlands and healthcare sector, how it's organized, because I think that we need a new data infrastructure. I think it's an essential thing to guarantee future health, and that is lacking in the Netherlands, at least, because we need better detection and better identification what's wrong with a patient, and we also need a much better way to follow up and to monitor the patient, what's going on. And what we see in the Netherlands here is that a lot of technology which you could use for diagnosis is the implementation process there is it's very slow, and systems are not connected to each other. And I also think that if you do not have a treatment, if you do not have a proper treatment, of course you have to develop it, and that is also something what we see now. It takes long, it's expensive, and it's risky, and I think we should all work together to look at these processes if we can improve these processes. So that's my wish list in but I have many more, Claire knows, but I will stop here, and I'm happy to take questions. Thanks a lot.
No, thanks very much, Annemiek. And it's amazing because the implementation of biotechnology beyond the initial science is, 95% of the journey is after the point of discovery. And I've been making notes all the way through these presentations. And I think what the learning that we always take away from this is, as human beings, to make it a little bit philosophical now, we build and operate immensely complex and often incompatible structures. And we also do not tread lightly as a species. And these are things that we have to address. So in the webinar that we've looked at today, we have talked about the transformational power of biotechnology. We've looked at the production of everyday, nutritional supplements like vitamin A. We've talked about how you can make sustainable aquaculture. We've talked about how consumer products across the board can become much more sustainable. We've looked at how you can address big problem areas in agriculture, and the technology solutions are already there. And Tom's amazing presentation about how you address rare diseases, which are often life-limiting and certainly life-changing. We need to be able to harness those better. We've got the biotech breakthroughs. We need to build the processes through which they are delivered. And everything that we've talked about today is intertwined with our own economy. A sustainable Europe is very competitive. If you have advanced manufacturing and advanced biomanufacturing, you have an extremely competitive industry, because Europe is not on its own in this journey. It's a global journey. And Europe needs to make sure it's running as fast as it can to make use of the amazing science that it has. And I would say, if it was easy, it would already be done. And so it's a real testament to people across all the different countries in Europe and the different sectors, the different organization types, that they really want to do this. And this is what we see all the time in EuropaBio. The spirit is absolutely there to do this. A huge amount of pre-competitive work goes into making this more sustainable. And biotech is always frontier technology. It's exciting every day. For exactly as Annemiek said, it's exciting when it works, but it's also amazing when it doesn't work. It teaches you something new every time. So I would like to thank our four speakers for an amazing insight. It was really a whirlwind tour into products, processes, countries, end users, mechanisms. We've bottled up biotechnology and put it into a little bottle for you to take home with you today. So I would like to thank again once more all of our speakers. We will be sharing the presentations. And I have my final wrap-up slides as well, which I've entirely forgotten about. So I would say, when I'm talking from EuropaBio, it's like, bring your voice into EuropaBio. If you are a company or an opinion leader or a research center or an association that would like to be involved in helping shape what Europe looks like for biotechnology, you should be part of EuropaBio. You can join our councils and identify policy priorities, and you can be the champion for biotechnology, because nobody tells it better than the people driving this forward themselves, as our speakers here today have demonstrated. So contact EuropaBio, contact me, and we also hope, going to my last slide, We look forward to seeing you all this week through our European Biotech Week activities. If you can just put the last slide, Martina, that'd be fantastic. Thank you. So we'll see you in our next meeting, and don't forget to see what other amazing meetings are being hosted across Europe all of this week. And thank you once again. So goodbye to our speakers and goodbye to our audience.